Yeah, why don't I give a quick introduction to myself and then kind of open it up things. So for the purpose of this conversation, I've been an entrepreneur for most of my career, mainly focused on impact and sustainability. Started my first software company about 17 years ago in Western Canada that we brought down to California and built out through venture funding. I moved over to the UK to expand that business in the late 2000s until we sold the company in 2010. Since then, I've been doing a number of different things, predominantly focused on impact and sustainability and the technology side of that. So currently helping out with Founders Factory on a project looking at impact and ratings, and involved in a UK government initiative called the Global Entrepreneur Program for the last 5 years or so, which leverages entrepreneurs like myself to work with aspiring companies and entrepreneurs looking to make the UK their base to go global. And I've put most of my emphasis within that program on Africa. So I've spent a number of trips over the past 5 or 6 years. Zach and I worked together on with Babs on CUDA, who introduced, and I had a fireside chat earlier today and discussed his recent large seed raise, but tend to work with a lot of B2B fintech businesses that are looking to scale.
Great, thanks. Thanks, Stephen. Zach, why don't you go next?
Yeah, quick one. Yeah, so I've been in South Africa for the last 10 years. I moved here from sort of doing banking in New York in my 20s. Started the first corporate accelerator in Africa called Tech Lab Africa with Barclays. And in 2016 launched Startup Bootcamp's operations in Africa. Startup Bootcamps are the largest accelerators in the world. And yeah, currently I'm a principal at NetBank Venture Capital and running a Pan-African seed fund. But yeah, I think the focus of this discussion is around the importance of accelerators. So very happy to give some of the lessons learned from building more
Thanks. So let me just quickly introduce myself, Stephen. We've never met. Zach and I know each other very well. So we have a common connection in the fact that I'm one of the early investors in CUDA Bank. So I was the largest syndicate in CUDA's angel round, the 1.6 million pre-seed round. And I'm also an investor in Startup Bootcamp. So, I have a connection there. So my name is Raj Kulasingham. I'm a lawyer by background. I still work at an international law firm called Dentons. I was a partner there between 2000 and 2010. Now I spend my time between Dentons and growing an angel portfolio, currently about 30 plus companies split between Africa and Europe and UK. Invested in a couple of funds, and really excited to be here today. And I wanted to start by asking you whether you like curry.
I absolutely do. So
I love curry. I mean, and my mother, my mother used to make curry the old-fashioned way, right? So she used to dry the chilies, dry the spices, and then grind them all together. And that was for me the best curry, And I see the sort of accelerators, and you'll see where I'm going in a minute. I see accelerators as being kind of an ingredient in that chili, in that curry, but really, what else do you need, right? So if you're talking about pushing the needle, what else do you need other than accelerators to move the needle?
Yes, is that to me first, or
whoever wants to come in? We can also talk about curry. I like, we can also talk about interest in curry.
Zach, you take it first.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to. I'm happy to. Gosh, I mean, my family. Half of my family is from India, and I'm ashamed to say that I'm not. I can't handle curry as well as most. Well, as well as most people from India should. I, for the most part, will stick to my kormas or my very, very mild curry then. But yeah, bit embarrassing, but yeah. But from a sort of work standpoint, accelerators, if you were to compare accelerators to chili that go into a curry, it's something that and focus on almost a synthetic deadline. And what I mean by that is people often confuse accelerators with incubators, and they assume that an accelerator is a place where you can go and birth your idea, get some help from mentors, some workshops, some seminars, and eventually get to point B. What accelerators do is because accelerators have a hard deadline of 3 to 4 months at the most, and you have a demo day where you have certain outcomes that you're expected to get to, and investors to pitch to. An accelerator is that chili in your curry, if to use that analogy, I suppose, without which you won't get a desired outcome. And because you have these synthetic deadlines of a demo day, a requirement to raise a certain amount of funding, and in certain accelerators that are backed by large corporates require you to be able to prove your concept through a POC or a pilot before demo day. So accelerators create that spark or that spice or whatever that helps entrepreneurs achieve their goals a lot quicker than they normally would. That would be my 2 cents.
But what else you need to make the curry, right? I mean, curry is not just about chili, right? So Stephen,
well, that's it. And there's 2 things. If we carry on with the curry analogy, is one, they've taken over time an evolution and a globalization, right? When you talk curry, initially we think of kind of Indian variations, but there's great Thai variations and others. And I think kind of paralleling that analogy, I think what you need is the right ingredients alongside of it, because certain things within an accelerator don't work if you try to force it, and I think you need an ecosystem, right? So to Zach's point, incubators are exactly as I said, and they're often misunderstood, right? They're very early stage. They're designed to incubate an idea. Accelerators are supposed to be designed to take a scaled business and begin to accelerate that. But a business can't accelerate on its own, right? It needs that ecosystem of support in its host country. Everybody talks about what comes to mind for founders, and it's access to capital and it's access to customers, but it's more than that, right? Access to talent, access to mentors, access to new markets. So I think it's those additional elements that go into making it effective. And with accelerators, when they first launched, and I guess Zach could probably attest to this as well, they've evolved a little bit over time, and there's some good ones and there's some bad ones, right? As everybody rushed into that space, you saw, a lot of people trying to make the same curry, with different ingredients, and many of them fail. So I think you need a really good ingredient checklist to build it.
So how do you if you're a startup, how do you choose, if you're a startup in Africa, let's say hypothetical startup in Africa, let's get off the curry now, we'll move on to the real stuff. How do you choose an accelerator? Which one would you apply to? How do you choose? Because like everything in life, right? You can buy a Porsche, or you can buy a Kia, right? I mean, so how do you choose the best accelerator? What are the ingredients? I'm still back on ingredients. So what are the things that you need to look out for in terms of choosing? How do you apply? Is there a scale? Is it geographic? Is it sector? What is it?
Yeah, and I think to the point that we both made before, probably looking at timing for your own business is one of the biggest things that you need to be considering, right? That every founder that I've ever met that's in an early stage business is thinking, if I don't get money now, we're going to fail. And the reality is they don't tend to get money, and they don't tend to fail right away. But they're always in a rush to get money. And I think some of the accelerators that I'm not a big fan of use that to dangle it over to try to get companies in. And if we come back to that point again around kind of incubators versus accelerators versus scale ups and others, it's got to be the right time for the business, where the business has gone past the value prop, and there's things that need to come into it, including capital, that are going to help the business take off. So I think the first thing you need to do is look at when. The next thing you need to look at any accelerator is, if you're taking an honest look at your business, what is it that I'm short of, right? Is it experience within fundraising? Is it experience within, acquiring customers? Is it accessing new markets? Is it accessing talent? And then decide if that's the right thing for them. I think beyond that, location and other things, particularly now post-COVID, matter less.
Sure. And
yeah, I mean, those are all very good points. I mean, the one thing I would add, in addition to timing and finding the right investor mix, is also in Africa, at least, who are the corporates that are backing this accelerator, right? So most of the regional accelerators in Africa have a model where the OPEX is covered by 1, 2, or 3 corporate sponsors. In Startupbootcamp's case, 6 corporate sponsors. But if you join an accelerator, if you're within the top 10 global accelerators operating in the continent, the content that you receive is pretty much 90% the same. So you learn about growth hacking, about accounting, about legal, tech, IP, UX, UI. It's pretty stock standard, right? If you're in the top tier accelerator sort of quality in the world. But what makes accelerators different, in my opinion, are 2 key things. The corporate partners that back it. So how do you sign POCs and pilots and license agreements with corporate partners that are demo day, or certainly within 6 months of demo day? And then number 2 is, what level of access to investors do you have as an accelerator? So how do I get further funding? How do I get corporate commercial traction? Those are what makes an accelerator stand out from another one. So I think you should also pick accelerators by what you can get commercially out of it and what you can get from an investment perspective later. The amount of money that the accelerator gives you is literally pizza money. It's not a lot, but it's the reputation that comes after that matters.
And to that point, Zach, and it's a great one. They're going to be on your cap table for life. So are they working shares down the road, right?
Yeah, precisely.
And just turning the conversation around a little bit, right? So what would you look for in someone applying to come onto an accelerated program? I'm sure there are lots of people. In fact, I saw in the chat there was someone who asked, she runs an incubator in Abuja, and just looking to basically to partner with other firms. But what would you look for in terms of your pipeline, and also in terms of the startups that you're looking for to be in your cohort as an accelerator?
Yeah, I mean, I can give my thoughts on that. Startup. I can speak purely from Startupbootcamp's perspective. So we're a Pan-African accelerator, so we need startups to have Africa as a clear target market. You don't have to be an African company, but Africa needs to be your target market. And because accelerators accelerate companies, although it's not a specific requirement, it's an unwritten rule that if you don't have technology as a key driver of your growth, it's unlikely that you'll make the cut to get into our program. So technology needs to be a key driver, and you've got to be in a sector where your total addressable market is at least $100 million within year 5. That does not mean that you have to have $100 million worth of revenue in year 5. It means that you have to have a demonstrable chance of targeting $100 million worth of paying customers by year 5. That's the whole idea of being able to accelerate businesses within a short period of time. So as an accelerator, we think we can provide you the networks, the resources to a small small extent the money, but the partnerships to get you to $100 million in TAM, total addressable market, by year 5. If we think we can, and we see you benefiting us likewise, then that's a good fit. And because we're an African program, we have the added requirement of you needing to be having at least one African country as your primary target market, but that's something specific to us.
Yeah, I think I would definitely double down on Zach's point around the addressable market, and significantly more that than the confidence to know exactly how you're going to fill that addressable market, because you are dealing still with businesses that are somewhat early stage, and you want businesses that are confident but not necessarily arrogant in saying this is the exact fit and we know exactly how we're going to penetrate that market. That's kind of the point of the accelerator, that you want to be able to have businesses that have had some sort of market validation or technology validation, but they need help in order to shape that to fill the hole that exists, right? So if you got a business that said they had no competition and couldn't define the market, that's a couple of strikes definitely against it. Whereas I'd be much keener to work with a business that has a general idea about how to fill a market, and that addressable market is sizable, and the entrepreneur, and seeing that it's a common denominator. Babs is a good example of that when he came to Startup Bootcamp, right? There was a confident entrepreneur that recognized a massive addressable market, but recognized that probably over the 2 years or 3 years post Accelerator, the value prop was going to change slightly, but still be able to grow and learn and adapt. I hate the word pivot, so I won't use it.
And Stephen, I mean, in terms of what you're doing with GEF, I mean, is that something that people apply to, or how does it work? If there are people here on the call who are interested in coming on to or getting the benefit of that kind of program, how does it work? Yeah,
so it's called the Global Entrepreneur Program, and it was created by the UK government, and I'm assuming there's no government representatives on, so I can honestly say that it was clever on behalf of government. I'm probably closer to the Reagan approach of the 8 feared words in the English language, or I'm from the government, I'm here to help. But what the UK government did was recognized that entrepreneurs were a different breed that spoke a different language, but were important to the growth of the UK economy. And this was in the early days where the UK was trying to create an ecosystem, around Tech City that has blossomed. And so they went out and reached out to entrepreneurs like myself, and I think there's 16 of us around the world that have been through, the experience. I moved to the UK with the business, and kind of what I thought was going to take a few months to get set up took me a couple of years to build a network. And so what we do is find businesses that we think we can actually help, and in return they are looking at making the UK their base. And we work with them over the course of a year or so. We only work with 6 or 7 founders and companies per year, and sometimes that's teaching them how to speak English in the English way to acquire customers or investors. Sometimes it's negotiating your way through visas or through government or bank accounts, that type of thing. So for us, anybody that's interested in doing it, there isn't as strict a criteria. There's a judging panel, kind of like an investment committee that we put companies forward to, but they really tend to be IP-rich businesses, from other markets that we as individuals can actually assist through our own networks and our own skill sets.
And is it like a set time when you have to apply, or do you every year, or is it open for application generally?
No, it's interesting that it's not quite an accelerator, because it is open to finding the right people and then making sure that the UK and the type of businesses it kind of meets the criteria.
Sure. Look, I want to sort of move the conversation a little bit into maybe give us some stories of. It's always good to hear the good news stories, but I often feel that the bad news stories tells us more about, what needs to be done, what needs to be changed, and gives people a real idea of how to go about. So tell us your best bad news story, right? And what you'd have done differently in the place you're in.
So, for me, I'll do this first, and then Zach, you can follow in. But my best bad news story is always my own businesses, right? Like with my first business, we were doing something really cutting edge in a lot of ways, right? We were before SaaS. We were actually doing something that was, for all intent and purpose, software as a service. And the business that I created, we were trying to put a price tag on corporate enterprise carbon position and use that monetized carbon price to help organizations make better business decisions and lower global emissions. And this was 17 years ago. So really cutting edge. In that case, we brought the company down to the valley and did the big VC route. And as soon as the inevitable bump happened where we didn't grow as fast as we thought we would, we didn't have the support network and the ecosystem and the mentorship to know how to stick to. So for about a year and a half, we listened more to the experts, and it really just about drove our business into the ground. And we had to take more investment than we wanted. We got diluted out of the business more than we planned to, before we were able to right the ship and get it back to the point where we became market leader and we were able to sell the business. So I think, in most cases, the biggest mistakes are that thing that I referenced before, that pressure to think that you absolutely need the money now and that your business is going to fail if you don't get, what you need right away. I think if you can, get trusted mentors and step above that, you'll realize that most startups are in the same boat, and there's probably other solutions that you haven't seen yet.
Zach, we're gonna we don't take that, and then I think we're gonna wrap up because I've been told I'm running out of time. We can carry on the conversation separately. Thanks a lot, Stephen. Zach, do you want to just quickly tell us your best bad news story?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we had a startup in our cohort that so as an accelerator, it's very important to manage founder ego. Founders come in with fantastic ideas, but often don't understand how to sorry, Stephen, to use the word pivot their business models typically from what's normally B2C, because that's what's sexy in Silicon Valley, to go to B2B2C. And we had a startup in East Africa in our cohort that took our advice when they were part of our accelerator to pivot to a B2B2C business model. And the moment you leave the accelerator and you leave the nest and go past demo day and you suck everything you can out of an accelerator, on networks and teachings and everything, the risk is you go back to doing business as usual. So one of the things that we've learned is when you help accelerators to change their business models and think global, is you have to have someone either on the board or the advisory team that's constantly there to keep founders in check. Being a shareholder alone is not good enough. That is something that I would strongly say. And because accelerators, all the way from the good ones like YC and Techstars and Startupbootcamp down to the regional ones, because they manage so many companies, they don't have the bandwidth to have people on the boards of their portfolio companies. If YC were to do that, YC would literally have to have, close to 1,000 board positions that they can't do. So in lieu of that, accelerators should start getting observers or advisors to represent the accelerator's interests to keep founders in check. And I think that is, an important piece of, just feedback that accelerators should look at going forward, as accelerators are now, quite the norm in the tech world.
Great, thanks, Zach. Stephen, Zach, always informative. Thank you so much. We'll talk more about curry another time. But for now, thank you for coming on board, and look forward to continuing this journey into Africa with both of you.
Great. Really nice to meet you, Raj. And Zach, good to speak again. Thanks for the time,
Okay.
guys.
Thanks, Stephen.
Cheers. Thanks.
Raj. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.
Cheers. Bye, guys.